I call Julianne Genter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I feel I will have to respond to the previous speaker's contribution to some extent to say that I think that he's mistaken about the nature of the policies proposed both by the Green Party and the Labour Party, because the Green Party, as always, is a party that is very focused on living within our means. And so a Green government would, of course, be entirely fiscally responsible, but better than that, would take into account the things that New Zealanders actually want. And I'd say that New Zealanders know that you get what you pay for, and if we don't make contributions to government services, then with a national government, they will see increasingly eroding public services, squeezed health services, because as that member accurately pointed out, their party is ideologically committed to reducing taxes, particularly on those who are earning the most money and those who own the most wealth. And so the rich will get richer under the national government, and the rest of the country will suffer and not receive the services that they want, the social and physical infrastructure that they know will build a long-term, healthy economy and society, which is what a Green and Labour government would absolutely prioritise, a long-term, healthy society and economy, because we know we can have that. So when it comes to tax law, it's riveting. And I'm sure people at home would love me to go through the detail of this particular bill. Unfortunately, I wasn't on the Select Committee for the entirety of the submissions on the bill, though I was there for the beginning. And people at home can see this is the bill, this is the commentary on the bill, and this is the disclosure statements and regulatory impact statements, all just for one bill. So tax law, as always, very interesting to delve into the detail of it. I will start by saying there are a couple of principles, and one is that tax law needs constant monitoring and improvements to make sure it's working the way that it is intended to work. So I congratulate the work of the officials on this and all of the officials at IRD who are hopefully working very hard and properly resourced to ensure that our tax law is being complied with and is working as intended. Because, as ever, there will be people who are seeking to exploit loopholes in the tax law to avoid paying their fair share of tax. And there will be things that aren't working as intended that actually send the wrong signals to households and businesses and create problems for them in achieving what they want to achieve. And so one of the major parts of this bill, the one that we heard the most submissions on in Part 2, related to closely held companies and particularly look-through companies, which was the replacement structure introduced in 2010, 2011, when we lost the LAQC category. What a look-through company does, or was intended to do, is enable the owners of the company, the shareholders, to pay the tax directly on the earnings or offset the losses of that company against their own personal income. So it's not the company that pays the tax or absorbs the losses, it's that goes straight through the company to the owners of the company, and that enables them to offset, at times, losses against their personal income. And there were identified by IRD over the last few years some difficulties with this. There wasn't quite the same uptake that they expected, and so there are changes that have been proposed, and hopefully this will enable the tax law to be more transparent, but also to work as intended. Because I think one of the unintentional consequences of the look-through companies, combined with our very unusual foreign trust law, was that a number of people offshore who are non-resident in New Zealand were able to set up foreign trusts in New Zealand with look-through companies and effectively use these structures in a way to avoid paying tax in their home country. And that's something that we certainly, I don't think most New Zealanders would be in favor of our tax law and foreign trust law being used to that extent. There's been another bill already passed into legislation in this House recently that does address some of the problems with foreign trust law. This one had already been initiated and made changes to the eligibility of having a look-through company and the way in which dividends were treated. That's in, and of course the Select Committee made the decision to to add some transitional provisions for those who are affected by the changes to the eligibility to be a look-through company. So that's, you can find that in clause 118B in this bill. Another change to non-resident withholding tax and the approved issuer levy for those who really follow the acronyms of tax law, AIL. And all of that is part of our ongoing work through the OECD on BEPS, that's base erosion and profit shifting. And this is incredibly important work. It's incredibly important that we address this global challenge because companies and individuals globally have been incentivized to some extent to minimize their tax liability. And you can understand why companies and individuals and households would try to minimize their tax liability. But we actually need tax to invest in the physical and social infrastructure that makes society possible, that makes business possible. Most of the great innovations that have been incredibly profitable, whether it's Apple or Facebook or a variety of different innovations, they're almost always supported by some sort of government investment. And whether that's the simple physical infrastructure of something like the internet, or whether it's government grants or investment in research and in education that enables those businesses to create good ideas and then run with them. We need to have businesses and individuals giving back to society so that we can maintain the level of investment in the infrastructure that makes our society possible and makes ongoing prosperity possible. And so I think globally there really needs to be a movement. It's important that New Zealand continues to contribute to this, and I'm happy to say that it seems to me that the changes in this bill will go some way to assisting with a bit of a crackdown on multinationals who are trying to exploit our tax laws, trying to avoid paying their fair share of tax here in New Zealand. And of course, that ends up hurting the people of New Zealand. And ultimately, it's going to hurt us all in the long run because we are all in this together. And it's a really important job for government to protect and empower people, to ensure that the rules are fair, and to ensure that the rules are complied with. And the global challenge we have right now is because of the interconnectedness of communications and the global scale of trade, and all of that makes it more likely that companies can they can play countries off against each other. They can threaten to pull their particular investment in a country on the basis of tax preference. And so companies are actually in a position, multinationals, of playing countries off each other so that countries are in a race to the bottom to make their tax law the most favorable for the companies, which is going to be the worst for each society. So globally, we have to work together to stop this sort of behavior so that society can flourish in the long run. And I'll just end by talking about going back to part one of this bill, which of course sets the income tax rates for the coming year. And I thought it was really important, the observation that my colleague Michael Wood made in his contribution on this reading of this bill, which is that the income tax rates set for the coming year effectively reflect a redistribution away from the poorest New Zealanders and the middle-class New Zealanders to high-income earners that was instituted by this national government with their tax changes now 7 years ago. And there's an ongoing cost to that. And that ongoing cost can be seen in the increasing pressure on mental health services, health services in general. It can be seen in education and the ongoing need for schools now more and more to rely on contributions from parents for programs and the sorts of technology that students need to be learning at school. It can be seen in the ongoing deficit in infrastructure investment in Auckland, which is going to result in an absolute catastrophe in a few years' time with ongoing population growth. We simply aren't seeing the level of investment in public transport infrastructure that we need. A lot of this comes back to choices that were made by this national government to prioritize tax cuts for high-income earners over the future of the country.
I call Richard Prosser.